Hey, welcome to Joe Hoft here on Dr. Maria's show. Here for the second time this week. Happy to be here filling in for Dr. Maria. She's out of town and was not going to be able to make it, so she asked me to step in. So happy to be here. Had a great show on Monday. We had Christina Bobb and Mark Fincham. Talked a lot about things going on, so it was a great show, and I think We've got another great show lined up today, so it should be a lot of fun. A couple things I wanted to start off with, though. Maybe one, we'll talk about this event that we've got coming up in a couple weeks. I want to mention it to you maybe a couple times on today's show. We've got this event. It's August 9th and 10th in Las Vegas. I have the best speakers in the business and the best MC in the business as well. This will be at the Ahern Hotel. It's 9 a.m. starts both days. On Saturday. We'll be going till probably around 5:30, and then on Sunday probably ending by noon. Not much past, so instead of 3 p.m., probably noon on Sunday. But be a power-packed weekend. We've got General Flynn, who's just tearing it up right now. Just incredible work that he's doing. And sharing the message on Twitter, letting people know that, hey, Barack Obama is a treasonous criminal. And he and President Trump have been pointing this out like crazy to let people know, to get in their conscience, these people are criminals. And it wasn't President Trump. It was never President Trump that was the criminal. It was the criminal in chief himself, Barack Obama. And what he's done to this country is unforgivable. It's unforgivable. We need justice now. And so anyways, General Flynn has talked a lot about Rudy Giuliani. He's going to be at this event. Love Rudy. He's been, these are people, all of us that have been attacked by the deep state. Roger Stone as well. These are the three, really, I'd say the three stars of this weekend. We're going to give them each an award as well. They deserve it. The hell that they've gone through, the hell from this monster deep state and these really Barack Obama and these monsters that were trying to take over our country. I think China's involved. I think the globalists. I think the central banks. They're all part of destroying this wonderful country. By the way, I noticed today that Jerome Powell will not lower rates. He's insane. The guy should be thrown in prison along with the rest of the people, these crooks. He's not there for American people. He is destroying this country through his actions. Spent $3 billion on that building there that looks like the Taj Mahal now after his, and it's been a complete failure. They went over budget over and over again. $3 billion on an upgrade only. Unbelievable. If you ever worked in the corporate world, you know how much a billion is. There aren't many companies in this country that make sales of $1 billion, let alone income. And they blew three like it's no big deal because they're stealing our money, I believe. And you hear the calls for in the Fed. I'm all for that now. What Powell's doing by keeping the rates up, he says he's not going to lower them. He's saying some BS today about, there's inflation in the future. What a liar. He's an absolute liar. The tariffs have come in. There's been no increase whatsoever, and the economy's on fire. There's absolutely no reason for him to keep the rates high. And what he's doing by keeping them high is he's costing every one of us thousands and thousands of dollars in debt. What he's doing is an extra $1 trillion by keeping the rates higher than they should be. If he would lower them to the 1% or even less where they should be, we wouldn't be paying $1 trillion extra every year on our debt. And that's all due to him. That's his decision, his teams. I think that's criminal to burden the American people with $1 trillion of excess interest on debt that is not, it shouldn't be there. It's unbelievable to me. We get these monsters in these positions in our government, and they need to be removed. I think there's a number of judges around this country that are just as corrupt, and just a number of corrupt individuals in the legislature and the Justice Department. We've got to clean them out. We've got to get rid of them. We've got to clean them out, arrest them, and hold them accountable for their actions when they've committed crimes. So lots going on there. That happened today. All sorts of stuff. We'll be talking about this in a couple weeks at the event in Vegas. By the way, Dr. Maria will be there. Rudy Giuliani, Roger Stone, as I pointed out. David Clements will be there. Christina Bobb, who was with us on Monday, and many others. Just some of the best people, and many, if not every one of the people that's being invited. Those of us that are putting it on, we've been attacked by this deep state. It's been pretty ruthless. These people are. They're evil. It's beyond just being mean. They are evil. This is the beginning of what Nazis and communists do. We suffered through it under the Biden years. We don't know who was running the country then, but it sure wasn't Joe Biden. More likely it was Obama. And I hope there's evidence for that so that we can throw that guy away for good. What an absolute monster. Well, look what he did to President Trump in his first term in office. The whole time he's been under attack. Since then, he was under attack. They tried to steal half $500 million from Trump on a bogus, these bogus cases in New York, the Mar-a-Lago raid. What were they really looking for is the question that we need to know now. Everything, it comes back to Obama, and that's what Flynn and Trump have been saying. So it's great. It's time for justice. That's what it is. And many of us know what that's like. One thing I wanted to bring up too, I put a piece up this morning. It's about Orange County, California. Maybe we can show that to you just briefly. I wrote a lot about Orange County after this election. I wrote 3 books after the 2020 election. And then in 2024, we knew it'd happen again. And I just happened to latch on to Orange County due to some people out there saying, hey, you need to look at this, Joe. And we found all sorts of things. Yeah, if you scroll down on this piece just a little bit, I can point out some of the things we found. One is they needed people to help cure ballots. And so we put a piece up on that and went to the Gateway Pundit. And then President Trump retruthed it. And that kind of started the whole thing moving. Then what we found out is that they had a bomb threat the night that we said they needed these people showing up to cure. We got video from that. In California, of course, they have ballot harvesting and mail-in ballots where there's no controls around those. And many, my background was in corporate audit, corporate finance. This is a joke. None of this stuff is certifiable. Not at the corporate level. It never would pass. And I was so shocked with this in 2020 when all this stuff happened. There's the notes on the voter identification in California. They made it this year. You can't even ask for somebody's ID. So how the hell do you know who's voting? It's unbelievable. The list goes on and on. If you scroll down a little quicker through this piece, we can talk more about some of this stuff. Voter identification. The election observers, they're not able to call out challenges because if you do, you can actually get thrown out or even arrested. I mentioned earlier there was a bomb threat on Friday, November 8th, just after the election. What we found was that it was due to an email. Nobody was kicked out of the building right away. There was no sense of urgency. We got a video actually from that evening and found out that we even saw this one individual here shoving ballots through stacks 3 times while they're under a bomb threat that evening, Friday evening on November 8th. It was outrageous. They never did arrest anybody for the bomb threat. It's just crazy. And they had an email from somebody, and yet they couldn't figure out who sent it. To me, it's just unbelievable. Everything in that election was broke. We found out that their voter rolls were absolutely broke. They did weeks of counting. And then we came up with the big bomb, and that was that they in Orange County, and we looked at it. We had the list of all the people that voted, and we looked at it, and we couldn't determine that 1 out of 5. We did determine 1 out of 5 individuals who voted in the 2024 election in Orange County are illegitimate. Most of them are illegals. They're not U.S. citizens. There's many that were phantom voters. We don't even know where they came from, what's going on there. And to me, it just appears that they grab somebody's name and throw it in a Dropbox and vote for Kamala and the Democrats. That's what's happening. And so all that's happening, and this was in 2024. So we dug into it in 2020. Then we jumped into it in 2024. We're not free of this yet. So hopefully there's going to be a lot of work over the next few weeks, really, and months before the 2026 election so we can get this fixed. One guy who I met very early on after 2020 was speaking out about that election. He'd read through all these affidavits, I believe 1,000 himself, and he was convinced that something was going on. I didn't know him before that. I met him at an event with Michelle Bachmann at Regent U. And since then, have followed a lot of what David's done, have been a big fan of his. and we're lucky enough to have him here. We're going to have him in Las Vegas in a couple weeks. So without further ado, here's David Clements, known as Professor David Clements and Attorney David Clements. David, thanks for being here.
Hey, Joe, it's good to see you.
Yeah. Hey, isn't it? I think back when I first saw you was at that event of Michelle Bachman's, where you shared. I had no idea who you were, but I really liked what you were sharing, and I went and watched your segment and was like, "Wow, this guy's pretty amazing." And I think that really kind of started my following you and becoming a big fan of yours for a long time. Why don't we start off, though, before we even jump into that, Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself for those people that may not really know who you are? Give us a little bit of history leading up to 2020.
Yeah, that's a big question, right? Because we've been through so much over the past 4.5, 5 years. I was a longtime prosecutor for about a decade. I oversaw 6 law enforcement agencies in Lincoln County, New Mexico, and got to take some pretty horrific cases all the way to the Supreme Court of my state. And if people got dispatched from this earth, I was on a short list of prosecutors to go out and get the bad guy. And then after a stint as a prosecutor, I got my dream job, which was to go to my undergraduate university, which was New Mexico State University, at the business college to teach law. And I did that for about 3.5 years. And around 2020, when all of the COVID hysteria came about, I just noticed this huge undercurrent of just deception and lies related to COVID. And that's something that first set off some red flags by virtue of the fact that I taught consumer protection law and we weren't allowed to ask questions. So, so I think in 2020, I got into a lot of trouble at the university for pushing back against the mask mandates, the COVID mandates. And I was also paying very, very close attention to the 2020 election because I knew that either the woke madness would cease under Donald Trump's rule, or it would get really, really bad at the university in which I worked. And Biden was installed. We had a fraudulent and rigged election. And I think the rest is kind of history. Since then, I've tried to figure out what has happened, much like I would have done as a prosecuting attorney. I mean, there's a lot of investigation, even though I wasn't employed by the state like I was before. I still have the same questions and same methods. And fast forward to about a couple of years ago, we put out what I think was the most definitive documentary that really explained all of the different ways of subversion of our elections. And last November, with bated breath, many of us were trying to figure out whether or not Trump was going to be able to pull off a miracle, and he did. And over the past 6 months, I've just been amazed at his accomplishments, and it's like a page turner. I just can't wait to see what he's going to do next.
I know, isn't it amazing? Seriously, these first 6 months of Trump, even last time, he did so much under so much fire, and was surrounded. Now we look back, he was surrounded by these monsters, from Pence now to Paul Ryan to these so-called allies. They were nothing like it. Reince Priebus and the guys that were getting kicked out, like Flynn and others. It was all a deep state coup. It was a coup d'etat, and it looks like we're finally going to look into that. By the way, we've talked. You weren't a huge Trump fan probably in 2016. Something switched at some point. When did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, 2016, only thing that I knew about Trump outside of like a cameo in Home Alone 2 was The Apprentice. And I wasn't a big TV watcher. I was out doing trials and investigations and cases. And so there's just a level of salesmanship and Hollywood fakery that it was hard for me to see who the real man was on a reality TV show. So I just didn't have a sense of whether Trump was the real deal or not.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, one of the candidates that ran for president was Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson was a 2-term governor of New Mexico. And by all rights, he was a really good governor. He was actually known as Dr. No. He vetoed more legislation than all the other governors combined. We left our state with $1 billion surplus. So I liked Gary. And so I didn't think that Gary really had a snowball's chance in hell of beating out one of the major players, whether it was Clinton or Trump. So, I had reservations. And then one of the things I think that just changed my mind early on, though, about Trump was everyone that I loathed in the media had this, they just had it out for him. And I don't think I'd ever seen a politician outside of maybe Congressman Ron Paul who was just so detested by the mainstream media. And so I'm sitting there going, maybe I got this guy wrong. And, so I talk about my evolution with Trump. About a year in, I'm like now defending him, maybe begrudgingly to family members. It's like I'm not quite out there as a Trump guy, but it didn't take long for me to kind of do an about face and say, okay, I think I got this guy wrong. And, by the time we got to 2020, I was all in. I mean, I was really excited about voting for Trump. So I'd like to think that even though I didn't see him as clearly as everyone else did in 2016, that when it mattered, when everyone turned their back on him, when everyone sold him out, when everyone was putting a knife in his back, when it was actually really unpopular to stand by his side, at least, figuratively, I made a decision that really was tantamount to career suicide, because, boy, did the university hate the fact that I was telling everyone boldly that Trump won the 2020 election. And since then, my admiration for him has not only grown, but I can look back with a new set of eyes and say, this man he's a modern day George Washington. I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people, oh, he's not perfect. I hear people saying, I'm saying, well, he's absolutely the perfect guy for this moment. I don't know if Lincoln could do it. I don't know if Washington could do it. I don't know if anybody could do it. The things that he's done and surviving the assassin's bullet, that to me was a miracle that just kind of showed us all that there was something here. There's something bigger, and that we must fight, fight, fight. The 3 words that come out of his mouth after that are fight, fight, fight. If we're successful, if we're able to crush this insurgency that's been going on for some time, I believe at least since Obama started, then I think that will go down as one of the greatest phrases in world history. I think in 1,000 years, if it's still remembered, it will be one of the most famous phrases ever. And I heard him recently say something on the 1-year anniversary, something like, that wasn't him saying that. He said something like that. It just came out. And what a moment. I had a guy, one guy well from Wisconsin, Jefferson Davis, called me up just crying when that happened. My daughter called me up, and we're all just like, what's going on? And he survived. And that was such a changing point then, too, because all of a sudden Elon's on board. Robert F. Kennedy's on board and all that. And I wanted to mention one, too. I had 2 older sisters that were Bernie fans. And when Hillary won the nomination or stole the nomination, they were not going to vote for her. They voted for the Green Party in 2016. And shortly after Trump came in, all the people they were following were saying, this is the guy. This is who we've been after. This is exactly what we want. Somebody's from outside coming in. And Trump was an outsider. He won the Republican Party, and they hated him for it. The Republicans did. And then, of course, Hillary came after him, the criminals. What do you think about maybe we'll step back a moment. What do you think about the Russia collusion stuff as that first came out? What were your initial thoughts?
I think the thing that rocked me wasn't so much the Russia collusion stuff. There was the infamous Billy Bush tape that really, I think, if you were going to try to set up someone to destroy them, put that out there. And I didn't have any reason to, to think there was something amiss from the intelligence agency. So I was like, well, maybe this guy isn't as pure as the driven snow. And again, I don't want to like sell Trump short, but that I'm just looking back, that had an impact on me. And as a person who wasn't following all of the politicians, in fact, I kind of held the entire swamp with just dismay. So the Russia collusion thing to me struck me as noise. It didn't have the same impact on what I thought about him. Because I'm sitting there going, a lot of these people are just detestable politicians. And so it was one thing to just get insights into his personal life. Maybe he's got some locker room banter. Maybe he's got mean tweets. I mean, we've all heard the criticisms. But in some ways, the consolidation of political elites going after him had the opposite effect on me, if that makes sense. It like the fact that, he had Mueller involved and you've got all these people that I didn't trust any of them. I mean, when I tell you that I could not count on one hand the number of politicians in Washington, D.C. that I liked, I'm not exaggerating. So it seemed like the more that everyone was on the same page against him, I'm like, I think they're lying to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and at least 60-70% of the population, I think, people were like, we were destroying the mainstream media. They kept pushing that every day. Let me ask you this. The thing that sold me against the Russia collusion, I was already on the Trump train. And by the way, that one tape, the Billy Bush tape, whatever you want to call it, that comes out. We find out now that Pence and Ryan were big parts of that. And but then what happens is Trump has a debate in St. Louis with Hillary. I'm overseas. Jim's telling me about this. Trump says, well, I'm going to talk about this. He has a room reserved. They open it up for the press. The press comes running in. They want to get him. They want to get Trump. And there he is sitting there with these women that have been abused by the Clintons, like 7 women. And they interviewed all these women. And then Trump went in there and brought all those women in with him. This is stuff we've never seen before from a politician. The guts and the audacity of him to do that stuff. We were like, this is genius. I think Bannon was in large part behind a lot of that. That was so smart because that's what I was thinking. How can you go after this guy for saying that? My God, girls are falling at his feet. The guy's a billionaire. He's famous, all this stuff. And Bill Clinton and Hillary, what do you mean? For me, it was like, it didn't register. Then they dropped that on everybody. It was like, it was amazing. But jumping forward, sorry, to the Russia collusion. I haven't asked any attorney about this, I don't think yet. And it's, as an auditor, I saw that Mueller and Comey were good friends. And then I started looking, and this whole team was people that hated Trump. And in audit, you couldn't do an audit if you have a conflict like that. You can't audit something that you have a relationship with somebody or you have strong feelings against. There's no way. You're going to be taken off the team. And yet I saw that in this Russia collusion. I'm thinking, of all things, you'd want an independent team. And it was far from that. Did you notice that right away?
Well, I think that independence is a bit of a fiction when you get to DC. I mean, everyone seems to know everyone. And so, yes, like under corporate audit standards, under a courtroom setting, you want to make sure that a judge doesn't have some vested interest that's important to the parties. So that aside, you would expect to have impartiality. The way that Washington, D.C. tries to manufacture independence is by using the word bipartisan, right? So I don't think you can truly achieve independence. So the way that they do it is just like the J6 Unselect Committee. We're bipartisan because we've got Liz Cheney and some other creep on the radical left, and then we're all supposed to be comforted by the assembly of the worst of both parties. So I that wasn't something that I was really focused on. But I think looking back now, post 2020, and seeing some of the revelations that were just declassified by DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, has certainly given us kind of a fresh take on exactly what happened. Things that had an impact on General Flynn. One of the reasons why, it's probably easier to speculate now why he wasn't appointed to, one of these strategic key positions, because speaking of independence, it would look so politically self-serving to have, Flynn presiding over a declass that involves himself, his own name. So to have a longtime Democrat, anti-war, turned independent, be the spokesperson, this being Tulsi Gabbard, to declassify this, certainly gives you the imagery of independence. And you could say the same thing about RFK Jr., another lifetime Democrat. So Trump's unique selection of cabinet picks certainly does not feel like the same kind of nepotism that we're used to.
That's fantastic. His team's unbelievable. Tulsi, I never expected this from her. She's been real solid as the last few weeks. Bobby Kennedy is. I don't. You know what? I think his cabinet, and I've heard Elon say it. This is the best cabinet ever. Lincoln had a great cabinet. Lincoln, my understanding, was brought in the smartest guys you could find, and some of them didn't like him, thought he was a country bumpkin, and they fell in love with him over the years. Trump's got just a fantastic team. I think this team loves him too. I think, and I think they're really working hard. Everything I see every day, it's coming out in every department. It's hard to keep up with. Great stuff. We still got a lot of scoundrels out there to stand up against, though, for sure, and all that. But David, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a quick break, and then we'll come back and let's talk about, the transition. And then what's going on now, as well as what do you foresee happening here in the next, really next few months? That's quite a bit, but maybe next few years as well. How about that?
Absolutely.
So we'll be right back here with Joe Hoft on the Dr. Maria Show and David Clements.
The last time President Trump was in office, gold soared 50% and silver went up a huge 53%. Americans who invested in silver and gold during Donald Trump's first presidency are very happy that they did it. And right now, gold continues to soar to the highest numbers in history. These gains are just an appetizer for what's to come. Some market analysts are saying that gold is predicted to rise another 30% in the next year alone. So now's the time to invest in gold and silver, and that's why I partnered with Fisher Liberty Gold. Fisher Liberty Gold is a conservative-owned and operated precious metals investment company. They even helped my good friend President Trump get elected through their contributions to Turning Point USA and other conservative groups. I have dedicated my life to ensuring that people get the best sleep ever. And in addition to owning a MyPillow, I can now sleep well at night knowing that you can all protect your savings with precious metals with Fisher Liberty Gold. With Fisher Liberty Gold, you can sleep well knowing that your retirement is secure. And if you call now, you're going to receive your very own presidential gold guide and qualify for up to $20,000 in free silver. But wait, there's more. Call now or text metals to 26786 to receive your presidential gold guide from Fisher Liberty. And for a limited time, I will send you a free MyPillow for qualified accounts. This presidential gold guide from Fisher Liberty will tell you exactly why you need to own gold even while Donald Trump is president. And just by calling in, you get a free MyPillow for a limited time for qualified accounts, and up to $20,000 in free silver. So don't wait. Call 1-888-4GOLD-19 or text metals to 26786 today. That's 1-888-4GOLD-19 or text metals to 26786 today to receive your free MyPillow and up to $20,000 in free silver.
Hey, we're back. This is Joe Hoft sitting in for Dr. Maria today. Real honor to be here back on Lindell TV. It's a lot of fun. And it's also great fun to be with a good friend of mine, David Clements, Professor David Clements, or Attorney David Clements. Many people know you with different hats, David. You know, we're talking about the past few years. What an incredible time in history this has been. It's just been so amazing. And David, you've been one person that's really been down in the, what would I say, with the grassroots, really working hard. And one thing I was thinking about here recently too, I saw Enrique Tarrio this morning. They're putting together a movie on him, a documentary that looks like it's going to be pretty amazing. And his story, in fact, he was thrown in solitaire and all the things he went through. But David, nobody that I can think of went through as much as you have in trying to help these people that were thrown in prison, like Tarrio, that never should have been there. They did. Enrique wasn't even there on January 6th. You saw these people. I don't know if I'd say as victims. You saw these people that the government had way stepped overboard on, and you were there for them, maybe more so than anybody. What can you say? Why did you do that? What was it that led you to these people? And tell us a bit about some of the stories that you did during that time period.
Yeah, well, when I went to law school, I remember the commencement address when they I don't know if it's a commencement, it's like more like a convocation when they welcome you to law school. And I remember the president of the law school saying the law, to be a lawyer, can be, don't laugh, it can be the most noble profession, meaning there's a way that you can put on this white hat. And, that was music to my ears as a guy that was, wanting to dedicate myself to public service. And then fast forward into a legal career, what I saw was just abject corruption, basically put the legal profession right down there with used car salesmen. And it's one of the reasons why I gravitated towards prosecution, which will get me to your question. Because I didn't have to worry about billable hours. I didn't have to worry about, just representing a client maybe that I didn't like. I could actually serve justice. So on January 6, 2021, when we all saw this false flag that just seemed to emanate as soon as an objection was presented by the Arizona electors challenging the 2020 election, I knew something was up. And I had watched the live stream all day of all of these people praying for our country, these like Midwestern Christian moms, veterans, servicemen, law enforcement. They get swept up into the greatest false flag that I'd ever witnessed. Was so offensive to me that I took it on personally. Like, man, like there's no greater misjustice that I've ever seen as a lawyer. And certainly as someone who's prosecuted real bad people like murderers, rapists, thieves, to see the legal profession effectively turn its back on the J6ers and not afford them the same robust defense that they would have done to the dregs of society was so heartbreaking that I just felt like this deep conviction that the legal profession might sell you out, but I won't. And so from that moment on, I've done whatever I could to use my platform to cheer them on and try to provide solutions.
Man, David, you've done more than just so much more than that. You would go to these prayers that would happen every night in D.C. You went to a number of evenings there praying with those prisoners. Can you tell us a bit about that? And how many of those did you go to over the last few years?
Well, the real heroes at the J6 Corner was, or Freedom Corner as we called it, was Mickey Woodhoff, the mother of Ashley Babbitt, Nicole Reffitt, several others, Roger. I know them by sight, but you had people that were camped out and would read a roll call of everyone that was in prison. They would have jail calls where they'd speak to the prisoners right outside the prison walls. just to let them know that they weren't forgotten. So those are the OGs. What I would do is kind of almost feel like a newsman, where I'm bringing you news from across the world, because I would travel so much. So about every 2 months, I'd make it a point to go to the corner, to fly to DC and check in on this incredible group. And we captured a lot of that in Let My People Go. We wanted to take people to the corner that hadn't been there just through watching the documentary. But we also had an incredible team through this ministry that we started called the Prisoner's Record. And we would host nightly prayer calls. It's still going on even now. We're probably looking for a new vision after the mass pardon. There's still a handful of J6 prisoners that haven't been able to kind of free themselves from state-related charges. But for the most part, Trump did something that was just so masterful when he was sworn in for this blanket pardon. But that group was a little bit different than the other groups. The other groups really seemed like there's a level of grift maybe associated with them. I don't want to call out any one in particular, because there's a lot of fantastic groups. But there's an idea of, let's raise a bunch of money for lawyers. And then the lawyers would burn through the money that was raised only to plead their clients out and not present defenses. And so it's like, take the money and run. So the Prisoner's Record, we wanted it to feel different. We wanted this to be a place where we could help families pay off their mortgages and to get food in the commissary. We just wanted to keep the families intact, because we knew as long as you had a weaponized DOJ with Chris Wray, with Merrick Garland, you weren't going to get a fair outcome in the DC legal system. And so for the most part, that was where our focus was. And like I said, the election, we needed a miracle. We got a miracle. Trump got through. And then the next thing that we needed was a blanket pardon. And he delivered that. You mentioned Enrique Tarrio. He did not get a pardon. I think he got a commutation. So there's still a list of, I think, 14 that should have a better outcome. They should have something better than a commutation. And so those are things that we're monitoring now. We want to make sure that Stuart Rhodes and many of the other high-profile J6ers that didn't receive a pardon can be fully restored, because there's lots of things that are derivative of that. Stuart Rhodes, for instance, was a veteran. He should be able to get VA benefits. He should be able to have all of the benefits that he earned and accrued over his lifetime that he's been robbed of. So we're keeping an eye out for those things. And then the other honorary J6er is Tina Peters. We do prayer vigils for her every day in the afternoons.
Wow. I was speaking with these individuals that were with Enrique today, who were putting this production together. One of them said this about the commutations. They said, what do you think of this? Do you think, he said, with the pardons, they can then go and destroy the records. That's what he said. With the commutation, they can't. And so this was, and I don't know if this is factual or not, but he was saying, do you think that Trump put commutations on some of these people so that they could use these cases and the information wouldn't be destroyed, so they're in a future court battle? What do you think of that? You ever heard of that? Did anybody else?
No, I've heard of that, and that's possible. But I'm kind of the mind that the internet's forever, and so having used case management systems and knowing, even when people get their records expunged, right? And a lot of people get in trouble when they apply for jobs and they ask you whether or not you've ever been arrested, and if they've ever had the record expunged, they think, well, I don't have to disclose this. Well, actually, you do. And people can find that out, and you can get in big trouble. So if you can get in trouble for, thinking that you don't have to divulge certain things about yourself after an expunged record because you have a digital footprint, why can't we find, the records that we need to find? In other words, even if you're pardoned, you'd think there'd be a court transcript of all the proceedings in these bogus trials. There's going to be a trail of pleadings, of the motions that were filed, the plea deals that were entered into. So there should be a very, very specific paper record or digital record that follows every single one of the J6 prisoners. And even if you received a pardon, there are still questions about abuses that were caused by the DOJ. And so right now you've got Pam Bondi, you've got Kash Patel, you've got people that should be able to do their own audit of their own agencies to see where corruption existed, because they needed to root it out and get rid of the bad attorneys and the bad agents. And you'd hope that they're doing that within the past 6 months to make sure they don't have, the wrong people still in key positions.
You would hope so, but I guess we just finally got rid of Maureen Comey, and there's some thoughts about her even inserting documents into the Epstein files just to embarrass President Trump or implicate him in that stuff. So I think that's why it's so important. You just go in and you I almost fire everybody. I remember I was talking to Christina Bobb on Monday on this show, and I remember Chris Farrell from Judicial Watch. That's where Christina's working there now. And Chris Farrell came on Fox and he said, we need to just shut down the FBI, get rid of the organization, get rid of it. This is back during the Russia collusion years, Trump's first term. And he said, and then just start over and take all these cases, move them over to U.S. Marshals. And he was never on Fox News again after saying that. But I thought he was spot on. And Christina remembered that too. She agreed with it. I mean, I thought, tone at the top. You get an organization that's been corrupted from the top throughout. You've got a mess. It's almost impossible, I think, to bring it back to some sort of ethics, unless you get rid of some of the really, really bad apples. What do you think? Have they done enough in that regard? What do you think?
Well, it's tough because you've got a lot of people that will kind of talk big, but they're not confronted with the responsibility of how the worldview phase out an institution that's been around for decades and decades, So it's like when Kash made the statement that day one, he's going to turn the Hoover building into a museum. Well, he didn't do that, and he caught a lot of flack. But you can tell that he's trying to phase things out and direct people to different locations. So I think we can forgive a little bit of kind of the showmanship in trying to present a vision, provided that they're working towards that vision. Same thing with Linda McMahon. It's clear that Trump wants to shut down the Department of Education and bring education back to the states. So he's got a lot of people that are being they're being provided these positions that in the past would have been huge honors. And you have to think about, wow, I've been appointed to lead the Department of Education, but if I do my job right, I should be out of a job, like effective immediately. And so I'm just as curious as you are to see the people that are coming to what I would deem non-essential government administrative positions, in the sense that they could be carried out by someone else, the private sector or the state itself. How do you shut it down? If you were to ask like hardcore small L libertarians like myself, do we need the CIA? Do we need the FBI? I'd be of the mind to tell you that no, that most of this is stuff that can be done at a state level or through the military. Before we had the CIA, most intelligence, our intelligence apparatus was tied with the military itself. And the check against abuse there was that you had a civilian commander in chief. So you had a civilian that could make sure that you had a military that was responsive to the American people. And the other thing that was beautiful about the way that it was set up before was you didn't have fundraising that was done kind of off the books. So a lot of people know about the CIA doing a lot of fundraising through drug cartels. They had a say in some of the stuff that was going on with the opium fields in Afghanistan and some of the drugs that we're seeing below south of the border. And so they could kind of fund themselves without congressional oversight. You couldn't do that in the military. You usually had money that was raised because there was a declaration of war. That means you had buy-in from the American people who had daughters and sons that were fighting overseas. And so you had accountability that was real. And the intelligence apparatus was kind of somewhere in a military mission to defend us from enemies. And to the degree that you needed to defend against terrorists or something that wasn't necessarily a nation, you had this great tool called the Letter of Marque and Reprisal, which was made famous, I think, mostly through Jefferson and the Barbary Pirates, where if you had people that weren't necessarily flying like the flag of Iran or Russia, but it was a terrorist group, you could, discreetly call for assassinations and things that didn't quite fit the bill. So the founders were very wise. They had very, very streamlined things that could be used constitutionally to defend the United States. And there was a proper place for intelligence. Unfortunately, everything has been so bloated that it's really hard to differentiate between the mission of the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Homeland Security. And I read this recently that, I've also read that the quality of intelligence, when you have as many people as you have in the CIA, actually is diminished because you have the propensity for greater leaks to take place because you've got too many people that are carrying these precious secrets. So it really needs to be a smaller, more efficient agency if it's going to exist.
Interesting. So in our final moments here, what are the 3 things we need to do in the next, half year in order to be in the right spot, say in January? What is it that we have to do now?
Well, if you're asking me, there's not a whole lot that we can do. It really comes down to what is the Trump administration committed to doing for accountability. I think we're at the place now as a country where there needs to be prosecutions, convictions, and jail. Because if we get into a midterm scenario where there's no accountability, I think we're going to see a backlash from the deep state that will make 2020 look like really nothing. So I think the operative word for the day over the next 3 to 4 months is we better see indictments, we better see arrests and convictions, and whether that's through the DOJ or through a tribunal, it needs to happen because there needs to be a fear that any further subversion of our elections in 2026 will be dealt with swiftly. And I don't think people have gotten the memo that they're truly in danger from a DOJ that's willing to throw the book at the bad guys.
Yeah, I know. We'll see. There were some embarrassing moments here not long ago with the Epstein files, for example. And but then, there's other things that are really happening. Tulsi Gabbard, moving forward is really positive. So I guess we'll have to see. I saw Trump, too. He's got a couple executive orders out there related to elections, at least one that he signed that I hear that has to be, some things have to be addressed by like September, I believe. And there's some deadlines there for the machines to be certified, things like that. And I don't think they will be. I don't think they are now. So I can't imagine they will be in a month or so. So we'll see what happens there. There's going to be a lot of fire, especially from these states like California that they have no regard for our elections anymore. They're just an absolute joke. Like I was pointing out at the beginning of the show, it's not an election. It's not an election when you don't even know where the ballots are coming from or who they came from. It's just an absolute joke. And so that's what, so we'll see what happens because that would be nice to get elections back in order in California. So
yeah,
I guess we'll see.
You and I we've been harping on elections for 4 years straight. Nothing's changed. I mean, we've got momentum. You've got terrific people like Ed Martin that are in the DOJ that are doing incredible work. I think you've got Mac Warner, who's also a former SOS out of West Virginia, who's serious about these reforms. But I'm not persuaded that the administration has at least alerted publicly that this is a nation state vulnerability. This is something that we have to get away from these bogus talking points that this is just about, Democrats cheating through mail-in ballots. It's far bigger than that. And we owe it to ourselves to give ourselves the best shot over the next 2 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So much that you've done, David. I don't know how to thank you enough. You've just been a great friend and have helped so many people. Introduced me to a number of people that's been pretty amazing. And the work you've done with these January 6ers, I think that was the thing I said to Tarrio today as I was saying goodbye. it's like to Enrique, it was like, when you pass away, you're going to have this something that's really, really precious. You're going to know that you did the right thing when the pressure was on, and you can lay your head down and say, well done. And David, I think you as well have that same right to feel that way with all the work you've done. Been very selfless, have helped so many people. I think your rewards are coming, and it'll be a joy to see you and hear you in Las Vegas in the next couple weeks. Can't wait to really hear what you have to share, and so it'll be great seeing you again soon too. So, thanks for everything. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your help and everything.
Well, you're very kind, Joe, and I feel the same way about you and your brother, and just the courageous stand that you've made for journalism in general. I mean, you've given so many people a voice. You continue to do that, and so it'll be a great lineup of speakers. I'm honored that I got to sneak in through the back door and be a part of this event.
No, you walked in the front. You were in the front, buddy. No, you've been really powerful and really great in your own way. And it's been amazing to watch for a step outside of this thing. You're like, my God, why did God pick these guys? And it's been fun. It's been rough. It's been devastating at times, really tough, as you know. And but it's I do think there's something to it that that there's a blessing in all this, and that blessing is this knowing that you've done the right thing when the pressure was on, when other people wouldn't. You stood up, and that's something a lot of people don't have when they on their last days. Do they think that? I think the biggest thing people think on their last days is their regrets. Why didn't I do something? Well, you're not going to feel that way. You're not, because you've done some
I agree.
great
I think now it's just how do we continue to burn with a fire to do the right thing? Because I think a lot of people have kind of they've run out of inspiration, or they're just running on fumes. And so that's why I'm so quick to point out that really the Trump administration needs to close the chapter on the deep state. There's got to be the actual defeat of his persecutors, because his persecutors are our persecutors. And as soon as we see that, I think I'll be the first one. I've said this in the past. I'll probably run outside in my underwear screaming to the heavens if we actually get to see justice, because many people, I mean, just like you mentioned with Tarrio, we feel like there's a change. There's something different in the atmosphere, and we've secured some victories, but it still doesn't feel real, because the people that created the dragnet for the J6ers and for the election truth tellers have not come to account. And so it's going to be pivotal. And I would rather see it sooner rather than later, because I'd like to see Trump in some ways celebrate the latter half of his second term, instead of it always being, he's always in the crosshairs. Wouldn't it be great if we got all this tariff revenue and he's just gets to have kind of some time to enjoy the greatness of what he's
things like that. Yeah. Make America great again. What a great saying. I thought it was a slogan. It means so much more. David, thanks so much for being here. It's been an honor sitting in for Dr. Maria. She'll be there in a week and a half too, along with Rudy, and that'll be great seeing them. And just the real heroes. So if you're out there and you're listening in, please go out there, purchase a ticket. You can get the information at joehoft.com or the Gateway Pundit. Great speakers. This is just a short list there. There's Mr. Clements on the row next to my brother Jim and Peter Tickton. Larry Logan will be running it. Please make a point to be there. We also have a live stream. If you can't make it, purchase a live stream. You can watch it live that day. That's, I think, only $15. So you can go to the site as well. We've got that available as well. So thanks for listening. It's a joy to be here. Joy to be with you, David. And can't wait to see you again. Perhaps it'll be in Las Vegas. And again, thanks for all you've done for me and my family and our country. It's great work. It's really, really good stuff. So thank you.
Thanks, Joe. God bless.
Thank you. God bless. And we'll thank you, Dr. Maria. Safe travels, and she'll be back next week. And it's been a joy being here. Hope to come back again soon. Thank you.